The restaurant was the kind of place that didn't have prices on the menu. Not because they forgot, because if you needed to ask, you couldn't afford it. The walls were dark wood and low light. The food came out on plates that looked like modern art. The waiters moved like they had trained for this specifically and nothing else. Cho Hyun-sik had a table reserved here every third Thursday. He had never once eaten here with anyone he actually liked. Until 18 months ago when he married a woman from Dayton, Ohio, who asked the waiter if they had hot sauce and meant it sincerely. Tonight, walking out of that restaurant side by side, Hyun-sik and Kim were in the middle of a very important disagreement. "I'm not saying it's bad," Kim said. "I'm saying Grandma's collard greens would end that kimchi jjigae. Respectfully." Hyun-sik kept walking. "That is not respectful. That is an attack." "It's an observation. You said end. Because it would end it, Hyun-sik, with love. Grandma's greens are not playing games." Hyun-sik was quiet for exactly 2 seconds. The kimchi jjigae at that restaurant cost $400. Kim looked at him, and Grandma's greens cost $11 and some prayers, and they would still win. Money doesn't season food, baby. Behind them, Park Sung-min was walking at a respectful distance, jacket straight, phone in hand, and his small leather journal tucked under his arm. He was writing without looking down because after 6 years, he had developed this skill out of pure necessity. Day 847. They are arguing about soup again. This is the most romantic thing I have ever witnessed. I need a girlfriend, or a different job, possibly both. Ahead of them, Rookie was walking point, which meant he was supposed to be scanning the environment, checking sightlines, and staying alert. What he was actually doing was trying to remember if he'd turned off his apartment stove. He was 60% sure he had, maybe 55%. Big Tae walked to the left of Kim and Hyun-sik, silent, steady. Steady. He had the energy of a mountain that had decided to become a person. He noticed everything. He said nothing. When Rookie nearly walked into a lamppost, Big Tae moved one large hand and redirected him without breaking stride or changing his expression. Rookie mouthed, "Thank you." Big Tae's left eyebrow moved 2 millimeters. In Big Tae language, this meant "You're welcome. Please focus." The street was quiet. Seoul at night had its own kind of beauty. Lights on the Han River in the distance, the cool air, the hum of a city that never fully slept. Kim had her arm through Hyun-sik's. He had his hand over hers in the way he always did when they walked, like it was something he decided a long time ago and never revisited. "Okay," Kim said. "Final answer. If Grandma made her greens right now and put them next to your $400 soup. It is not soup, it is a stew. There is a distinction. If she put them next to your $400 stew, what would you pick?" Hyun-sik said nothing. Kim stopped walking and looked at him. "Hyun-sik, I am thinking." "You don't need to think about it if the answer is the jjigae. I am being thorough. Baby." He looked at her. Something in his face did the thing it only did around her, the thing that took 6 years of walls and boardrooms and cold voicemails and quietly dismantled all of it. "The greens," he said, very quietly, like a confession. Kim pointed at him. "I knew it. I knew. Tell no one. Grandma's going to be so happy. Kim, tell." "No one." She was laughing. He was trying not to. Sung-min was writing. He chose the greens. "I am emotional. I don't know why I'm emotional. I did 6 years of watching this man eat alone at a table built for 12, and now he's choosing collard greens over kimchi jjigae, and I think I need to call my therapist tonight." Then the lights went out. Not just the street, the whole block, like someone reached up and turned Seoul off. Hyun-sik's hand tightened over Kim's instantly. Sung-min stopped walking. Rookie snapped out of his stove, spiral immediately. Because whatever his faults were, when it mattered, the boy showed up. Big Tae had already shifted his body position before the darkness fully landed. 4 seconds of silence. Then they came from the left. 4 men, moving fast, weapons out, professional. 2 more from the right, cutting off the street. 6 total. Coordinated. Planned. This was not a robbery. Hyun-sik moved to step in front of Kim. Kim moved around him before he finished the step. "Baby, get behind me." "Kim, these men have..." Hyun-sik. Her voice was completely calm, the same voice she used when someone tried to lowball her in a business meeting. The same voice Miss Dorsey used before she handled something that needed handling. "I got it. Get behind me." He stared at her for 1 full second. Sung-min, from somewhere in the dark, wrote, "She said get behind her." He got behind her. I need to note this for my own future relationship goals. The first man reached Kim. He did not reach her for long. What Kim did in the next 4 minutes was not something she had been formally trained in. It was something closer to instinct, the kind of instinct that gets built when your grandmother makes self-defense a household subject, starting at age 9. When you grow up in a neighborhood where unbothered doesn't mean unready. When you are the kind of woman who has always known that the world will occasionally require you to handle things. She handled things. The first man went down before he said a full word. The second grabbed her from behind. She introduced his face to the side of the car parked at the curb. He did not get up. The third made the catastrophic error of laughing. Actually laughing, saying something to his partner about "this is the wife," and Kim looked at him with the same expression Miss Dorsey used on that Jehovah's Witness on the 4th visit and took him completely apart. The fourth man looked at his 3 colleagues on the ground, looked at Kim, looked at the ground again. He ran. He ran so fast, Rookie later said he had never seen a grown man achieve that speed outside of a professional track event. On the other side, Big Tay had 2 men handled with the quiet efficiency of someone doing a task they find neither difficult nor interesting, like folding laundry. He was done in 30 seconds. Rookie had the last one. He was doing well, genuinely well, right up until the moment he stepped back and his heel caught the curb and he went down. The attacker went down with him because Rookie's grip didn't release on the way. They both hit the pavement together. There was a long pause. Rookie was on his back. The attacker was face down. Neither was moving. Big Tay's right eyebrow rose 3 millimeters. In Big Tay language, this meant, "I watched that happen and I have questions." "I meant to do that," Rookie said from the ground. He had not meant to do that. Then, in the middle of the noise and the darkness and the chaos of 6 men handled, 2 sounds. Sharp, loud, unmistakable. Kim turned. Cho Hyun-sik was on the ground. The world didn't slow down. It stopped. Completely stopped. Kim was at his side before she consciously decided to move. Hands on him, voice saying his name. "Hyun-sik, baby, look at me right now," and his eyes found her in the dark and stayed there. He started. "Don't talk. I'm fine." "You were shot. You are not fine. Do not tell me you're fine." "Kim." Sung-min. She didn't yell. She projected it. The way a woman projects something when yelling is not an option and being heard is not negotiable. Sung-min was already on the phone. Emergency services, location pinned. His voice was shaking, but his hands were moving. He was already doing every right thing while internally doing absolutely none of them. "I am calling an ambulance," he wrote in his head because there was no time for the journal. "I am calling an ambulance and my boss is on the ground and his wife has blood on her hands that is not hers and I need to not pass out right now. I cannot pass out. I will pass out later." Professionally. Kim looked at the car, looked at Hyun-sik, looked at Sung-min. "How far is the hospital?" 12 minutes if get in the car. The ambulance is Sung-min. Same voice. In the car. Sung-min got in the car. He would process his feelings about this later with his therapist. At length. They moved to Hyun-sik. Big Tay's hands were on the wounds applying pressure. Calm, trained, steady. Rookie held the door open and then held Hyun-sik's hand because he didn't know what else to do and it felt right and nobody told him to stop. Kim got behind the wheel. She drove through 2 red lights, one section of road that was more suggestion than infrastructure, and one very brief encounter with a median that Sung-min would describe in his journal as an incident. Kimsi, that was a sidewalk. There was nobody on it. There was a bench. The bench moved. The bench did not move. We hit the bench. I felt it. We all felt it. Sung-min, are you helping me or are you narrating? Sung-min closed his mouth, opened his journal to a fresh page, wrote with a hand that would not fully stop shaking. The bench did not move. We hit the bench. I am updating my will tonight. Also, I think I love this job. I don't know why I love this job. Something is wrong with me. 7 minutes. They pulled up to the hospital in 7 minutes. When the doctors took Hyun-sik through those doors, Kim stood in that waiting room and did not move. One heel had snapped off somewhere between the restaurant and the car. Her knuckles were split. There was a small cut above her left eyebrow. She hadn't noticed until the fluorescent lights hit it. Her mascara was completely fine. Waterproof, she had learned. Sung-min sat beside her. He offered water. She took it. He opened his journal and sat with it in his lap and for a long moment didn't write anything at all. Then he wrote, "She hasn't cried. I have cried 3 times. I am 31 years old. I have a master's degree. I cried in the bathroom, in the elevator, and briefly in the car, but I don't think anyone saw the car one. I need to go home. He looked at the door Hinsick had gone through. He did not go home. Kim's phone rang. She looked at it. Miss Dorsey. She answered on the first ring. Grandma. Baby. Miss Dorsey's voice was the same voice it always was. Steady, warm, the kind of voice that had talked Kim through every hard thing since she was old enough to have hard things. Talk to me. I'm okay. I didn't ask if you were okay. Actually, I didn't ask anything yet. I just said baby, but I'm asking now. How is he? In surgery. They said it was stable. They said it was critical. Kim paused. Both at the same time. That means he's fighting. Yeah. And you drove him there yourself. Yes, ma'am. Through that city. Yes, ma'am. A pause. Did you hit anything? Kim looked at Sungmin. Sung looked at the ceiling. There was a bench situation. Miss Dorsey made the sound of a woman filing information away for later. I'm packing my bag. Grandma, you don't have to come all the way to... Kimberly Elaine. Yes, ma'am. I did not raise you to argue with me about whether I'm coming. I'm coming. I'll be there by morning. A pause. And baby? Yeah? That man loves you more than anything he has ever owned, and that man owns a lot of things. He is going to be fine. Kim looked at the door. He better be, she said frequently, because I have things to say to him about scaring me like this. I have several things to say. Miss Dorsey laughed, low and certain. Save them for when he wakes up. He'll need something to recover for. Kim almost smiled. It was the kind of almost smile that lives right next to tears and refuses to let them win. Across the waiting room, Rookie was sitting very still. His phone was in both hands. Big Tay sat beside him like a mountain that had decided to rest. Rookie said quietly, he's going to be fine, right? Big Tay's left eyebrow moved 4 millimeters upward. In Big Tay language, this meant yes. And if he is not, we will handle that too. Rookie nodded. He called his mother. She answered on the second ring. He said, Mama, I just need to hear your voice. His mother said, what happened? He said, nothing. It's been a night. His mother said, did you turn off the stove? Rookie's face changed completely. I'll call you back. He had not turned off the stove. The stove was fine. His neighbor had noticed and handled it. The hospital waiting room smelled like disinfectant and bad coffee. Kim had been sitting in the same chair for 2 hours. Same position. Back straight. Hands in her lap. The broken heel was somewhere between the parking lot and the entrance. She didn't remember losing it, only noticed when the floor felt uneven under her left foot. Sungmin was beside her. He had refilled her water cup 3 times. She had drunk all 3. He found this personally comforting in a way he couldn't fully explain and wrote about it for half a page. She's drinking the water. That means she's still here mentally. That means we're okay. I think we're okay. I have no medical basis for this conclusion, but I'm keeping it. Rookie was across the room. He had called his mother, hung up, remembered the stove, called back, and was now in a full silent spiral that he was managing by counting the ceiling tiles. He was on his 3rd recount because he kept losing his place. Big Tay had not moved, had not spoken, had not changed his expression. He sat with his hands on his knees like a man who had decided that stillness was the most useful thing he could offer right now, and was offering it completely. The doctor came out at 2:14 a.m. Kim stood before the man finished opening the door. He's out of surgery, the doctor said. Stable. The next few hours are important, but he is strong, and the wounds, while serious, missed everything critical. He paused. Your husband is a very lucky man. Kim said, he's not lucky. He's stubborn. There's a difference. The doctor blinked. Sungmin wrote, accurate. Kim sat back down. The doctor said more things. Monitoring, rest, limited visitors. She heard all of it and filed all of it, and when he left, she picked up her water cup and finished it in one long, steady drink. Then she said very quietly to nobody in particular, okay. Just that. Just okay. Like she had been holding a door shut with her whole body and could now, for just one moment, lean against it instead. Sungmin pretended to be very interested in his journal. Rookie stopped counting ceiling tiles and started crying silently, which he felt was reasonable given the circumstances. Big Tay's left hand moved 2 inches and landed briefly on Rookie's shoulder. Rookie cried slightly harder. Big Tay left the hand there. Then the hospital entrance doors opened. Everyone looked up. Miss Dorsey walked in. She was wearing her good church hat. the wide one with the ivory feather that she reserved for occasions requiring authority. She had a rolling suitcase in her right hand, a carry-on bag over her left shoulder that landed on the floor with a sound that was not entirely explained by clothing, and the expression of a woman who had flown 14 hours and was not even slightly tired because rest was for people who didn't have somewhere to be. The woman at the reception desk stood up. "Ma'am, visiting hours are—" Miss Dorsey looked at her, not unkindly. Just looked at her the way a retired nurse who has handled genuinely difficult things looks at a visiting hours policy. "Baby," she said, "I flew from Dayton, Ohio to Seoul, South Korea in the middle of the night because somebody shot my grandson-in-law. Now you can tell me about visiting hours, or you can tell me where he is. One of those conversations is going to go well for both of us." The receptionist sat back down. "Room 4B. "Thank you, sweetheart." Miss Dorsey patted the desk as she passed. "You're doing a great job." She found Kim in the waiting room. She set down the suitcase. She looked at her granddaughter. The broken shoe situation, the split knuckles, the cut above the eyebrow, the mascara that had survived everything, and she opened her arms. Kim stood up and walked into them. Miss Dorsey held her the way only grandmothers hold people. Like the hug itself is a complete sentence. Like it means I'm here and you did good, and I've got you, and none of this is your fault, and you are not alone all at the same time without a single word. Then she held Kim's face in both hands and said, "You drove through a sidewalk for that man. It was a small one. You hit a bench. The bench is—" "Fine, I know," Sungmin texted me. Miss Dorsey looked over Kim's shoulder at Sungmin, who gave a small, guilty wave. Miss Dorsey pointed at him. "You. Good boy. Keep drinking water, too." Sungmin wrote, "She called me a good boy. I would die for this woman. I mean that with complete sincerity." Miss Dorsey spotted Rookie across the room, still damp around the eyes, cut, ceiling tiles abandoned. She walked over, took his face in one hand the same way she'd held Kim's, and said, "You protected them tonight." Rookie's chin wobbled. "I tripped. And you still held on. That counts." She patted his cheek twice. "What's your name, baby?" "Everyone calls me Rookie." "What's your real name?" He blinked. "Doyun. Yoon Doyun. Doyun." She said it properly, fully, like a name deserved to be said. "You did good tonight, Doyun." She looked at Big Tae. Big Tae looked back. Something passed between them that required no translation. She nodded once. He nodded once. Conversation complete. Then Miss Dorsey picked up her carry-on, walked to the chair directly outside Hunsik's room, and sat down. She pulled out her knitting. She looked at the door like a woman who had decided she was a permanent feature. Kim watched her. "Grandma, you should sleep." "I'll sleep when I'm satisfied." She clicked her knitting needles together once. "Go sit with your husband." Meanwhile, across the city, in a boardroom on the 42nd floor of a building that CHS Global did not own, but that several people in this room wished they did, Chairman Wu was in an excellent mood. Chairman Wu was a man who smiled with all his teeth and none of his eyes. He wore suits that cost more than most people's rent, and had the specific energy of someone who had never once in his adult life been told no, and fully believed this was because he was right about everything. He stood at the head of the table looking at his associates like a man reviewing a chessboard he had already won. "By morning," he said, "the emergency trustees are activated. The clause is triggered. CHS Global moves into our hands before the markets open." He paused for effect. He enjoyed pausing for effect. "Cho Hyun-sik is in a hospital bed. His company is already ours." His associate, a narrow man named Baek, who laughed at everything Wu said because it was safer, said, "What about the wife?" Wu picked up his glass. "She's a girl from Ohio who sells moisturizer. What is she going to do?" Baek laughed. Two other men at the table laughed. Across the city, in the CHS Global Communications room, Sung-min, who had slipped away briefly while Miss Dorsey held the waiting room, was connected to a wire inside that boardroom. He listened to Chairman Wu's voice. He listened to the laughter. He opened his journal. He called her a girl from Ohio who sells moisturizer. "I have watched this woman fight 6 men, drive through a sidewalk, hold herself together for 2 straight hours without making a sound, and fix her lipstick in the rearview mirror at a red light. This man has no idea what is coming. I feel no sympathy. I feel only anticipation and mild personal excitement, if I'm being honest." He closed the journal, picked up his phone, called Kim. She answered in one ring. "They're moving on with the company," he said. "Emergency board meeting, 7 a.m. A pause. I'll be there at 6:30. Kim Si, you haven't slept. Sung Min, I'll have coffee ready. Thank you. She hung up. Sung Min looked at his phone, then at the ceiling. Then he wrote one more line. Chairman Wu called her a girl from Ohio. He is going to learn so much tomorrow. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe to our Korean chapter and hit the notification bell. Kim arrived at CHS Global at 6:28 a.m. She had not slept. Nobody needed to know that. She had gone back to the hotel, showered, changed, and returned looking like a woman who had spent a full 8 hours in a bed that cost more than most people's car payments. Black dress, fresh flats, because the heel situation was handled and she was not repeating it. Miss Dorsey's pearl earrings. A folder under her arm that she had been building since 3 a.m. using Hinsik's private files, her own memory, and a legal pad she found in the hotel desk drawer. Sung Min was waiting at the entrance with coffee. He looked like a man who had also not slept but had chosen to process this through productivity rather than rest. His jacket was fresh. His journal was in his breast pocket. There were mild shadows under his eyes that he had attempted to address with cold water and hope. He handed her the coffee. They're already inside, 8 of them. Wu brought his own lawyer. How many on our side? 3 board members who haven't committed yet. The rest are Wu's. Kim drank the coffee. That's enough. Sung Min wrote while walking. She said 3 is enough. I don't know if 3 is enough. She said it like it's enough. I'm choosing to believe it's enough. They rode the elevator to the 41st floor. Sung Min pressed the button and then stood very straight the way he did when he was managing his nerves through posture. The elevator was playing soft classical music. It felt inappropriate for the occasion. The boardroom doors were glass. Through them, Kim could see the table already full. Chairman Wu was at the far end, jacket perfect, teeth showing, talking to his lawyer with the ease of a man who had already written the ending of a story and was simply waiting for the pages to catch up. His associate Beck saw Kim coming through the glass and leaned over to say something to Wu. Wu looked up, looked at Kim, smiled wider. That was his first mistake. Kim pushed open the door and walked in like she owned the building. Technically, through Hunsik's holdings, she partially did. She had checked this at 4 a.m. specifically so she could think about it in this moment. She sat at the head of the table, not a seat along the side, not a polite observer's chair near the door. The head. Hyunsik's chair. She pulled it out, sat down, placed her folder on the table, and looked at the room like a woman waiting for a meeting she called. Nobody had invited her to sit there. Nobody said anything about it either. Wu's lawyer, a tall man named Attorney Shin, who had the energy of someone who was charged by the word, cleared his throat and began. He explained the emergency clause. Clause 17B. He used small words and a slow pace and the specific tone people use when they are explaining something to someone they do not believe will understand it. He went on for 4 full minutes. Kim let him finish the whole thing. Every word. She sat with her hands folded on her folder and the expression of a woman listening to a language she already spoke fluently being taught to her from the beginning. When Attorney Shin finished, he folded his hands and looked at her with professional sympathy. Do you have any questions, Mrs. Cho? Kim opened her folder. Several, she said, but not about what you just explained. She looked down at her first page. Then she looked up, and she spoke, in Korean, clean and precise, citing the counter clause to 17B that required a 72-hour notification window before emergency trustee activation, which had not been observed. Then the shareholder agreement amendment from 2019, filed by Wu's own legal team, that created a spousal proxy provision in exactly this kind of medical incapacitation scenario. Then a third clause, barely 2 paragraphs in the original charter, that gave the sitting CEO's spouse full voting rights in any emergency session called within the first 96 hours of a medical event. She closed the folder. The room was completely silent. Attorney Shin had stopped blinking. Chairman Wu's smile had not moved, but something behind it had shifted, like a very expensive painting that had developed a small crack. Wu said slowly, "You speak Korean." "I do." "Since when?" "Since I decided I wanted to." She looked at him. "I also read the entire CHS Global Corporate Charter. On a plane, 18 months ago, the Wi-Fi was broken and I'd already finished my book." Bike, sitting 3 seats down, made a sound. Not a word. Just a sound. The sound a person makes when they realize something has gone very wrong and they came to work anyway. Wu leaned forward. Mrs. Cho, with respect. Chairman Wu. Her voice didn't rise, didn't sharpen. It just landed. Your notification window expired 40 minutes ago. Your proxy appointments are invalid under the 2019 amendment that your own lawyers filed. And the spousal provision in Section 4 of the original charter means that until my husband returns to this table, I am sitting exactly where I am supposed to be sitting. She looked at the three uncommitted board members, looked at each one, held it just long enough. Then the boardroom door opened 3 inches. Miss Dorsey's face appeared in the gap. Church hat fully deployed, she looked around the room, spotted Chairman Wu, and her eyes rested on him for exactly 4 seconds. She said, just that. Just, the sound of a woman who has seen this exact type of man many times before and has already formed her complete opinion. Then she looked at Kim. Baby, do you want tea? I found the kitchen. She held up a mug. It said CHS Global on the side. She had taken it from the cabinet without a single hesitation. I'm fine, Grandma. Thank you. You sure? They have the good kind, not the bad kind. I'm sure. Okay. Miss Dorsey looked at Wu one more time. The mim energy was still fully present. Then she pulled the door closed. The room sat in the silence she left behind. One of the uncommitted board members, a quiet older man named Director Park, who had worked with Hun-Sik's father and had watched this company exist since before half these people were born, picked up his pen. He clicked it once and moved his nameplate 2 inches to the left toward Kim's side of the table. It was a small gesture. It was not a small moment. Wu's eye twitched. Just once. Just barely. Sung Min, standing at the back wall, opened his journal and wrote with the focused energy of a man documenting history. She cited 3 clauses from memory at 6:40 in the morning after no sleep. Wu's lawyer has not blinked in 2 minutes. Director Park just moved his nameplate. Miss Dorsey said and left, and it was somehow the most threatening thing that has happened in this room today. I would like to formally submit that working for the Cho family is the most stressful and most extraordinary experience of my professional life, and I will never leave. Also, I need more coffee. Chairman Wu was not a man who accepted losing gracefully. He accepted it the way a toddler accepts being told no, with a brief pause, a shift in strategy, and absolutely no intention of stopping. By noon, he was back in his own boardroom, jacket off, tie loosened, which for a man like Wu was the equivalent of a full breakdown. Baek sat across from him. 2 lawyers sat at the far end of the table, looking at their laptops with the focused energy of men who were being paid very well to find a solution and had not yet found one. She knew the charter, Baek said, carefully, like a man choosing words near an open flame. I can see that, Wu said. She knew the 2019 amendment. I can see that also. She spoke Korean. Wu looked at him. Baek, I was in the room. Baek closed his mouth. Wu stood up and walked to the window. Seoul spread out below him, 40 floors down, bright and indifferent. He had built things in this city, real things. He was not going to be undone by a woman from Ohio who learned Korean on her own time and read corporate documents for fun on airplanes. He turned around. Plan B, he said. The hospital. The 2 lawyers looked up from their laptops. Baek went very still. If Cho Hyun-sik does not recover, Wu said, the spousal proxy expires. The clause reactivates. Everything we planned goes through. He straightened his tie. Handle it quietly. Tonight. What Wu did not know, what nobody had thought to tell him because nobody had thought it was relevant, was that Miss Dorsey had been at Seoul General Hospital for 11 hours, and in that time had learned the name of every single person working the night shift. There was Guard Kwan at the main entrance, who had a daughter in her first year of university and was very proud of her. Miss Dorsey had seen his phone wallpaper and asked about it and listened to the whole story. He brought her coffee at 10 p.m. without being asked. There was Nurse Ha on the 4th floor who was 3 months from retirement and had strong opinions about hospital administration that Miss Dorsey fully agreed with. They had discussed this at length. There was young G, the overnight receptionist, who was cold because the hospital AC ran too high and had accepted the cardigan Miss Dorsey produced from her second suitcase without a single question about why it was in there. Miss Dorsey had also, at some point between 11 p.m. and midnight, repositioned her carry-on bag from the waiting room to the hallway directly outside Hyun-sik's room. Nobody asked her about the carry-on. It had that kind of energy. She was sitting in her chair at 1 a.m., knitting needles moving in a steady rhythm, when three men stepped off the service elevator at the end of the corridor. They were not in scrubs. They were not carrying anything that belonged in a hospital. They move the way men move when they have a specific destination and a specific intention and are not concerned about being stopped. They turned the corner. Miss Dorsey looked up from her knitting. "Can I help you?" she said. The men looked at her, then at the door behind her, then at each other. Miss Dorsey looked at her carry-on, then back at them. "You boys look lost," she said pleasantly. "This is a hospital. People are resting." The largest man took a step forward. What happened next lasted less than 2 minutes. The hallway camera later showed Miss Dorsey standing up, which was all it showed clearly before the corridor light did something inconvenient. There were sounds. A crash, something that may have been a mop. A very specific kind of yelp that Rookie, stationed at the stairwell end of the hall, would later describe as the sound a man makes when he realizes he made a serious life error. Then another crash. Then silence. When the lights fully stabilized, three men were on the floor. Miss Dorsey was back in her chair. Her knitting was in her lap. The carry-on was slightly open in a way that raised questions nobody asked out loud. Kim came running from the stairwell 30 seconds later. She rounded the corner, took in the scene, looked at her grandmother. Miss Dorsey said, "The floor is very slippery in these hospitals. Somebody should really report it." Kim looked at the three men, looked at the carry-on, looked at her grandmother's completely calm face. "Grandma? What is in that bag?" Miss Dorsey picked up her knitting again. "Essentials." Rookie appeared behind Kim, slightly out of breath from the stairs. He looked at the men on the floor. He looked at Miss Dorsey. He pulled out his phone and called his mother. She answered on the second ring. "Mama." "Duyan, it's 1 a.m. "I know. He looked at Miss Dorsey one more time. "Mama, when I come home, I need you to teach me everything Grandma taught you. Everything. Don't leave anything out." His mother was quiet for a moment. "Did something happen? I'll explain later." Big Tay appeared at the end of the corridor, looked at the floor, looked at Miss Dorsey. His right eyebrow rose to a height it had never previously achieved. In Big Tay language, this meant, "I have worked in security for 14 years, and I have never felt as unnecessary as I do in this moment." Miss Dorsey looked at him. "Big Tay, baby, can you call someone to clean this hallway? It's a hazard." Big Tay took out his phone. He called someone. It's like he did not say a single word about what he was looking at. Kim's phone rang. Sungmin. "The shareholder vote," he said. "Wu pushed it up. Emergency session. 2 hours." Kim looked at Hunsik's door. Through the small window, she could see the machines, the bed, the stillness of a man who was fighting something she couldn't help him fight. She put her hand flat on the glass. 2 more hours, baby, she thought. Just stay with me 2 more hours. Behind her, Miss Dorsey said quietly, not stopping her knitting, not looking up, "He hears you." Kim didn't ask how she knew. She just nodded once. Straightened up, turned around. "Sungmin," she said into the phone, "I'll be there in 20 minutes. The shareholder vote was scheduled for 3 a.m. Nobody called an emergency session at 3 a.m. unless they were desperate. Chairman Wu was desperate. He had just lost 3 men to a retired nurse with a carry-on bag and a knitting needle. His legal strategy was in pieces, and the morning markets opened in 4 hours. Desperate men make fast decisions. Fast decisions make mistakes. Kim was counting on this. The boardroom was the same room as that morning, but it felt different at 3 a.m. Harder. Colder. The kind of room that showed you exactly who people were when comfort was removed and stakes were real. Kim sat at the head of the table. Same chair, same pearls. She had been awake for 21 hours. Nobody could tell. Sungmin sat beside her with his laptop, his journal, and the expression of a man running entirely on coffee and loyalty. He had written 14 journal entries since midnight. His therapist was going to need a longer session this week. Big Tay was at the door. Solid, steady, immovable. Rookie was stationed in the hallway outside. He had called his mother twice, and his stove anxiety had been fully replaced by a newer, larger anxiety that he was managing through deep breathing and the knowledge that Miss Dorsey existed in the world. Chairman Wu entered last. He had fixed his tie, redone his jacket. He had the composed energy of a man who had talked himself back into confidence during the car ride over. He sat down across from Kim, and looked at her with the careful smile of someone who believed he still had a card left to play. He did have a card. One final shareholder, Mr. Lim, an elderly man who had been with CHS Global since the beginning and had remained publicly neutral through everything, had not yet voted. His shares were enough to decide the outcome. Wu had called Mr. Lim at 2 a.m. He had been very persuasive. The vote began. It moved quickly. Each name called, each vote recorded. Sungmin tracked everyone on his laptop, his jaw tighter with each entry. With 3 shareholders remaining, the count was even, perfectly, brutally even. Then the first of the 3 voted with Wu. Sungmin typed without looking up. His knee was bouncing under the table. The second voted with Wu. Kim did not move, did not blink, did not show a single thing on her face. She sat the way Miss Dorsey sat outside that hospital room, like a permanent feature, like something that had always been there and intended to remain. 1 vote left. Mr. Lim. The room was completely silent. Wu looked at Kim across the table with the expression of a man savoring something before it arrived. Then the boardroom door opened. Everyone turned. Cho Hyun-sik walked in. He was wearing his coat, because Sungmin had grabbed the coat, and underneath it a hospital gown that nobody had thought to replace, because the coat was all anyone had thought to bring. There was a bandage visible at his collar, an IV line that had been disconnected in a way that suggested the disconnection was not medically supervised. He was moving carefully. Not slowly. Carefully. The way a man moves when he is in genuine pain and has decided that the pain is not relevant right now. He crossed the room and sat down next to his wife. Complete silence. Kim turned and looked at him. The 21 hours of composure, the split knuckles, the broken heel, the bench, the waiting room, the glass she had pressed her hand against, all of it moved through her face in about 2 seconds before she locked it back down. "You are supposed to be in the hospital," she said. "You were taking too long. You have a hospital gown on." Hyun-sik looked down. Sungmin brought the coat. Sungmin did not look up from his laptop. "I panicked," he said quietly. "I'm sorry." Hyun-sik looked at Chairman Wu. He didn't speak, didn't gesture, just looked at him the way a man looks at something he has already finished deciding about. Then he looked at Mr. Lim. Mr. Lim looked at Hyun-sik, then at Kim, then at Hyun-sik again, sitting upright in a hospital gown with an IV mark on his arm and his wife's grandmother's pearls reflected in the boardroom light beside him. Mr. Lim voted. With Kim, it was over. Wu stood up, his chair scraped back hard. "This is not finished." The boardroom door opened. Miss Dorsey leaned in, church hat, knitting in hand. She looked at Wu with the full weight of a woman who had handled raccoons, bill collectors, 3 armed men in a hospital corridor, and 1 very confused Jehovah's Witness without raising her voice once. "Baby," she said. "Yes, it is." Wu looked at her. Something behind his eyes remembered the sound of that corridor. The mop, the yelp, the carry-on. He sat back down. His lawyer began packing his briefcase. Baek was already at the door. The room emptied with the quiet speed of people who had somewhere else to be and had always had somewhere else to be. Sungmin closed his laptop, opened his journal, wrote, "It's 3:24 a.m. He walked in a hospital gown. Mr. Lim took one look at them sitting together and voted with her. Wu has nothing. Miss Dorsey said yes it is, and the man sat down like a child. I have witnessed things tonight that I will never fully explain to another human being. I need sleep. I need therapy. I need a raise. I am never leaving this job." He closed the journal. Later. Hospital room. Quiet. Hyun-sik was back in the bed where he belonged, which had taken Kim, 2 nurses, Sungmin, and 1 firmly worded request from the doctor to achieve. He was against it. Kim told him he had walked into a boardroom in a hospital gown at 3 a.m. and 1, and that was enough heroism for 1 evening, and he needed to lie down. He lay down. She sat beside him. His hand found hers the same way it always did, like something decided a long time ago. "You drove through a sidewalk," he said. "It was small. You hit a bench. The bench is fine. Kim." He looked at her properly. All the boardrooms and the enemies and the clauses were gone from his face. It was just him. Just the man who chose collard greens over $400 stew and meant it. "Thank you." She looked at him for a long moment. "Don't thank me. Just don't scare me like that again." "I'll try. Try harder." His hand tightened over hers. Just slightly. Just enough. Miss Dorsey appeared in the doorway eating hospital jello with a plastic spoon. She looked at them both. "Hard-headed men don't die easy," she said. "Trust me. I was married to one for 40 years. She pointed her spoon at Hyun-sik. You're going to be fine. You already are. Hyunsik looked at his grandmother-in-law, the church hat, the jello, the carry-on sitting just inside the door still emanating its particular energy, and said with complete sincerity, "Miss Dorsey, thank you for everything." Miss Dorsey waved her spoon. "Baby, I didn't come to Seoul to let somebody take my granddaughter's husband." She ate another spoonful. "Also, your hospital has very good jello, much better than Dayton." Outside the door, Sungmin sat in a chair against the wall. Journal open. He wrote the final entry slowly. "They're going to be okay. I might not be. My blood pressure is probably concerning. My therapist has a lot of material. I hit a bench at 70 kilometers an hour and have not fully processed it. But they're going to be okay. That's enough." He closed the journal, leaned his head back against the wall, closed his eyes. Down the hall, Rookie was asleep, sitting upright in a plastic chair, head tilted back, completely unconscious. Big Tay sat beside him, awake, steady. He looked at Rookie's sleeping face, and his left eyebrow moved 2 millimeters. In Big Tay language, this meant rest. "We're done for tonight. Good work." He didn't say it out loud. He didn't need to.